Should we start?
Mm-hmm.
You're already. No, they really told me just half an hour ago that I'm in the other room and I was waiting, hey, when stop they talking, and they didn't stop. So.
Do you want to use the microphone?
Maybe. Yeah. Yep. It's on? But is hear me now louder? No.
That's fine.
All right.
We can all hear you.
Great. Sorry I didn't finish my slides. But it's only will bother you if you will attend to the second half of the talk.
Live demo.
Yeah, I would like to have, but like I said, my VLAN driver didn't make it, so I had to use Windows and couldn't install GNOME, and I can just do it. But I can blame Ubuntu. Great. But when is the break? You have to tell me. Yeah, I don't check time. Even if I'm a traveler to space and time, you see here my traveling suit as I was in Spain. Oh, it was a great trip. Yeah, that's a currently body I use with the oral name that's attached to it. Of course, that's my real ID, and what you can see in my credentials is that I am involved in Perl 6 as well as Kefra, which is the beautiful editor I use on my daily basis. And that's also the project I'm mostly known of in the German world. Yeah, you maybe ask why Kefra, so silly name. Yeah, you see it on the new logo with what's coming up. It's or here in that's original Egyptian hieroglyphs. How I possibly can come up with such ideas. But that's very simple because when you see the area where I'm living and was born, there are slight similarities. The village I live is actually behind that pyramid. Yeah, we have even more pyramids. Actually, we have also 3 pyramids lined up in a row, not as closely like the black, red and white famous pyramids of Giza, but we have that too. Come on.
Thank you.
You just missed the first 2 jokes. Yeah, that might be an influence, but there's just one problem. We don't have camels there. Okay, so I got a camel. The problem with this camel is it got a little bit aggressive lately. It's not as much fun. That's why I got a camel in addition. What? You want to ask something? What was not a question? No. To get my my fun and my toying. You may be asked, hey, that's not a camel. No, it is a camel. You just have to look deeply, and actually that's not how all people look on Perl 6. Some are even scared of it or think terrible things about it. And it's so far truth that Perl 6 isn't cocaine, what we call in Germany Schlafenland, which doesn't mean that you can lay and the food flies to the mouth, but Perl 6 you can compare more with the Holy Grail. Not in Indiana Jones sense that we just have to hunt, beat up some Nazis. No, we have to build it up, the Holy Grail, which is even more complex. But my idea initiates just look at. I invite you to look into the light because things like the Holy Grail, you can understand just if you experience you myself. Like you know from the medieval stories, there are sort of madness. Many knights got crazy. we got that too with the different projects. But there are many independent efforts. It's like you know it in the sagas, but it's for the good. So let's look into the light. It maybe looks a little bit like this. Fractals look much complicated. But as you maybe know, if you're interested in fractals, they really look, you can build up things that are very similar like nature. Yeah? And that's also the goal of Perl 6. That you can, all the different problems we are in everyday fighting against that are easy solvable, that are so much neat things in Perl 6, how you can solve everyday problems just with not one liner but few commas or very light genius syntax. And actually that's the most important slide of all my talk, because it nicely demonstrates that by all the beauty, all the complexity, if you can zoom in a fractal and go forever. It goes on and on and on. You have complexity endlessly. But if you look at all the things at once, you see that always the same elements. It is, all in all, it's not as much content, it's only reiterated. And that's how really, what's the beauty of Perl 6 is. Perl 6 tries to match the real world problems to solve them easy, but you have the same idioms reused over and over again. So you don't have to learn as much to really get a grasp of a complex language, because you have the same primitives used over and over again. Yeah? And these rules are much stricter than in Perl 5. Yeah? That's why also some compared it to a medieval castle and a Renaissance castle, where in the Renaissance castle the parts are much more straighter and linear, and there's some truth to it. All right, but let's get to the meat. The topic for today was data structure, because our overall language is just too much. You know, in the corporate world, data structures can be complex. We in the Perl world have it boiled down fairly simple. We use this and this, arrays and hashes, and from that we just build our data structures. Not forgetting the scalars, of course. All right, let's get to the meat. You understand that, or you're in the wrong room? Yeah. The good news is this is still valid Perl 6. It hasn't changed that much. Yeah? Ciao. I'm just nodding. Of course, if you know a little bit about Perl 5, you maybe write it this way, of course. That's still around in Perl 6, except this concept is so useful, we write it now this way. Because, you know, since Perl 4 we learned bare words are bad. We don't want to use much bare words in the language. So every time we want to drop some identifier, is it on the hash, is it on grammars, wherever. So we use angle brackets and reuse that syntax to just introduce some bare words inside the language which get auto-quoted, like the quote words. Of course, we have also a version with double brackets, pointy brackets, which is with evaluating, interpolating. You know? It's and that's also one of the beauties of Perl 6, that the rules of the syntax are very regular. Like you have the quoting, like the single quotes are just naked, and the double quotes with interpolation with the pointy brackets is exactly the same. So you get the same rules over and over. You don't have to have such a brain to comprehend Perl 6. No, it's just really just problems you can solve with it easily or complex. and that's why the language has to have some complexity, but the syntax isn't really that complex. But okay, going back to our line which we started, because I will actually explain you the magic what is going on here. Yeah? Because this line doesn't do actually exactly the same as in Perl 5. The results are the same, but what actually is happening here is a little bit different than in Perl 5. First of all, you can still write it in Perl 5 and 6 without the brackets, but in Perl 6 for other reasons. Because in Perl 5, these braces just indexing, oh, we want to make an array. That's not the case in Perl 6. In Perl 6, we have the comma, and the comma is in Perl 6 the list generating operator. Yes?
In Perl 5, the parenthesis is not what makes it a list. It's the comma. The comma is the operator.
In Perl 5 too?
Yeah. The parenthesis is just because the comma precedence is very, very, very low.
Oh, all right, because of that.
But the comma is an operator, so it's completely fine. So it's still different from Perl 6.
Yes, it's still different. But
I mean, a lot of people say, oh, in Perl 5, parentheses are the operator of list, and that's not true. Parentheses are just to change the precedence. The comma is the operator.
But if you put them at the left side,
sorry?
If you put the parentheses at the left side,
then you force array context.
Yeah,
that's why I thought that. But thank you for. No, I really love to learn to it. Yeah, but because in Perl 6 they never force any index. They just do grouping, and we come later do that. But maybe the round braces reminds you on making function calls or subroutines, or like you call it, and that's exactly the domain you have to think about when I explain it. But we come to it. The real difference between these two lines you can't see in this because they are assigned to an array. Of course, it starts with an F, that doesn't change. So this variable forces the array context, so whatever difference is here, it gets squashed. Yeah? So we have to assign it to a scalar to see more what's the difference between that lines. Yeah? Because when I assign to a scalar, then I get here a string and here a parcel. Yeah? And now interesting things start to happen. You maybe ask, what the fuck is a parcel? No worry, I will explain you. So maybe look at the string first. Roma, of course, is a string, which is the content of this cities. Because, as you know, this is also a thing you do in Perl 5. You assign several scalars at once. And this is what this line does. You assign this to that, and the others get thrown away, because there are no much. Yeah? No more confusion on this side. Here, of course, you make a grouping with the braces, and that's why this belongs to one parcel, which ends up in cities. Yes, but what is a parcel? A parcel is what was called it's not up to date, this slide. What was called a sequence. It's just a sequence of items. Yeah, because what I was forgetting to tell you on that slide. Yeah, because here on that slide, well, it's not scalar context. I have written item context. That was no mistake, because in Perl 6 we no longer say scalar. Of course, the variables with the dollar in the beginning we call scalars, but it's not correct in the sense. In the old days, we had their numbers and even strings. Even in the days of Unicode, there are still letters are still numbers. So the content of the variable you can place anywhere on a scale. If it's a number in a scale from 0 to million, or if it's a character somewhere on the character on the Unicode chart. But nowadays, in scalars are just object. Yeah, the news, the good or bad news depends on what your religion is. Everything is an object in Perl 6. I mean everything. You don't want to see, will see it, but I will show you it on more occasion that really everything is an object in Perl 6, and the objects can have many attributes and can be a very complex thingy, and that is not something you can put on a scale. So the term scalar is no longer appropriate, so we call it an item to say it's just a thing, you know, and we call this item. All right, and this item, of course, is a parcel. Yes? The question?
Sorry.
This is called parcel, and it's something we pass to a function. There are also these braces, and that's basically the same what's happening here. That's what the function gets. $_ is still around, so if you don't use signatures, you can still use the old style. Yeah. Of course, you maybe want to use a more Moose style, yeah. But if you don't, if you hate it and so no, Perl, one of the greatest features of Perl 5 was $_, you still can use it in Perl 6. Yeah? So don't worry. But it's basically the same. Because what generally a parcel is something which has a track of the order, but which can later become a list or a hash. You know, because in a function call we have, of course, positional parameters, like we normally know in Perl 5, and Perl 6. We get finally good named parameters, like every sane language should have. Yeah, and these named parameters, of course, are not positionals, but are retrieved by name, and a parcel is just a container which can have both. Yeah, they. So, of course, if you do the square brackets, then of course you. Simple.
Sorry.
No, I'm not shouting at you for being here. Then of course you force the array context like it should be, like Perl 5 people expect, and yeah, and you can of course do the same if you take the add as an operator, which force you list, and you maybe say, wait a minute, this was array, this was a list. Where's the difference? I explain you. Because lists are a little bit more complicated in Perl 6 than they are not just flat arrays. You will see that later. Of course, a list is just a different name for that. You can write it as an add or as a list. It's the same, just aliases. Yeah, and when you have your parcel, yeah, and when you force that operator which said give me the content as positionals, then of course you get a list out of it. Yeah, that's forcing. Yeah, that's a little bit of the deeper stuff. I just want to show you, but it's not just in case you're interested in that. Because if I put here just one of that, I say, okay, I just want to have the name parameters, and then I get a hash out of it. That is, we see later why this is very interesting, very useful. So, but just go back to the basics. We have the what method, which is just the introspection method on any object to tell me the name of that object. A little bit like ref was in Perl 5. or is in Perl 5. We put that method on cities, or in that cities. In both ways we say, of course, I'm array. Here it is because we have the add at the starting point, and this, of course, is an array variable. So what goes in is an array. Here is it because the square bracket, they force array context, and that's why this is array 2. And here's one interesting thing is now these variables you can use also in the completely same way. There are no more like row operators. In fact, to Perl, it's just identical. You know, for instance, people who come from PHP and say, oh, Perl sucks, they have this add and there's this percent sign. I don't understand it, it's just crazy. Perl PHP is much better because we have on any variable, we have the $sign. That's much easier. You can have that in Perl 6 too. You have this item, and this item has as content an array object, and that's it. And you use everything on that too, like you would use an array. So that's one of the things. You can come from many backgrounds and use it Perl 6 in your way like you used it before, which was one of the traditional strengths of Perl. You don't have to change. When you come from Java, you still can program Java in Perl. Yeah, but of course we have more powerful tools. Okay, let's start to do something with arrays. From now on, what is in this upper line is Perl 5 and the lower line is Perl 6. Just for comparison, because I think most of you are fluent with Perl 5 and can understand the idea immediately. We have no method or call length in Perl 6 because it's too ambiguous. You really don't know what it means, so it's the number of elements, which is got a little bit shortened. Of course, you can write it as a method because it is an object, and it just don't matter if it's write it with an add or with a dollar, because, like I said, same object, same method, same result. Yeah, you see here, you have to really screw around to get the same result in Perl 5. Yeah, if you have in a scalar an array ref. All right. If you want the content of the list, you of course also just say here's the arrays in it. Of course, you get the content in Perl 5. You had to do that, also if you force the scalar context, it's because of course the scalar variable and the array variable are the same. So they have to behave the same. So you can no longer use array in scalar context and then array the length. Yeah, it doesn't make sense because they are both the same objects, and there is no change in it if you just put it in the scalar context. So this thing is gone. Yeah, an array in scalar context just no longer returns you the numbers. Yeah, you see in the item context how it's pronounced, also either with the $sign or item, because like I said, it's the item context. All right, but how you do it? You do it with the plus sign, because the plus sign forces the numeric context, and because it returns a number, it just makes more sense. Yeah, but if I say give me array, you get the array, aka the content, which also makes more sense. Right, you have of course the numeric context with a plus. Which, yeah, and it works the same on the scalar. Yeah, it's totally orthogonal. Then you have the bool context, which of course give you bool true because our array cities has a content. Don't be worried about the bool true. We have in Perl 6 we have an object which is a class which is called bool, and it can has two different results, just true and false. But in normal results, it's got nicely evaluated. In numeric context, it's bool true 1, and in normal string context, it's just true. So you will actually see the bool true. It's just the real value of that, which is called by the internals. Yeah. and it's similar something like if you do in Perl 5 the values call, which is then in bool context just true that it has some values. And of course we have the string context, which is made by the, what is called in English? Not tilde? Tilde. Yes, thank you. What? No. And which you get the content like you would do if you make in double quotes. Of course, this is also the new concatenation, but in concatenations also you get the string context, of course. But if you actually want to do put it inside of a string to get abulation, you don't get it, you just get cities, because we want to write email addresses properly inside. You have to do it that way inside, and then it gets evaluated to the whole string, to the whole content, like it was this way in Perl 5. And you will see later why this is a clean way. That's nothing made up special case, oh, that it will works inside string. No, actually, this will work every time in the language. And this is actually the proper way to get all the elements of the array. We just put it also without for the Perl 5 people who are used to that. Yeah. And this is still better than the Perl 5 version, because in Perl 5 you get all the clunch together, and that is mostly what you really want to have. Yeah. To get it readable. All right, but of course we had now just a list, but normally your data structures are much nicer, also deeper. And if you then put it out, you just don't use say. You maybe in the old days, in the very old days, when dinosaurs gone upon the earth, we used data dumper, which all is downside, which is only one of them, you know. This is why Ingi developed a YAML, one of the reasons, which gives you a more pleasant output for your data structures, and which looks in that example like this, which is, but in many cases, just takes too much space on your terminal. It's very good for serializations, and that's but what you often want to have is the original form, which sorry, you will see it again. It's more.
That's YAML too.
That's YAML too.
Yeah, that's valid YAML. It parses the same as that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, but what I was going to say that he did. Yeah, I didn't know. We have in Perl 6 we have the Perl method, which gives you nice format, and if we say cities Perl, we get in that format, which is valid Perl. You can do it eval and get this data structure back, and it's easily readable. In Python it's called REPL, and so it has a more compact form than if you had in every line one value. And so you have a real good data dumper built in Perl 6. Yeah? And this is also one reason you can compare 5 with 6. Many of the core modules also built in, or just one method, or just a tiny thing, and does a full job of for what we have in Perl 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 modules. Yeah. All right, let's get single elements of an array, because we are now in Turin, and so Roma in Milano doesn't interest, is not now of interest. We get the second element of our array. Yeah, that's so far, it's just well known Perl 5. In Perl 6, of course, we write it this way because the sigil is now invariant. An array at the start, array starts always, which is normal sigils. Because the variant sigils, variable signals had made a lot of more sense in the Perl 4 days, and you don't have complex data structure, and you also get sure that when you put $1 at the front, you get a single value out of it. But since we have references, it's no longer true. We have to make nasty casts and so on. We fixed it a little bit in Perl 12, I think. Yeah. No, 14. This old mess is completely gone in Perl 6. We just use it this way. There's no arrow, and you just on the scalar. This is array. In the scalar, use it that way. This is array. An array variable, use it that way. Completely the same results. How is good? Yeah, like I said, completely the same. If you do the what method, thereby it's array objects. Of course, you could also use the same method because they are object get the same results. You can use the object-oriented way. You don't have to. We hide the objects as good as we can, because not only because we know that Perl 5 people don't often like to use objects, but it's sometimes not even the appropriate way to overburden everything with objects. You see a bad example like Java. But what this actually is, you can write also in that way, and then you say, oh, wait a minute. You don't want to tell me that this square bracket is a method? Of course it is. The square bracket is a method, just with a funny name. And this is also a lot of power comes from there, because you can also very easily declare your own operators in Perl 6. You just declare a method on the right object, and then you have an operator, which is very powerful. But most of the time you don't have to use that dot. You have to use the dot only if you want to leave space between the variable and this part. If you made nice formatted many lines, and you want this part under each other. So you have to, when you leave spaces between here, then you have to use a dot. That it concatenates with the variable before. Yeah?
So Perl TD will change.
Sorry?
Perl TD will change to adapt to.
Yes, of course. Has to adapt to very many things. That's why we don't even think about such things as tidying at the current state. All right. And the point why I showed you that is to give you the idea what this really is. That's just the method, and this method gets the parameter too. It's just the ordinary method call. It's but we no longer write it this way. But in Perl 6 we write it this way, and because I want to explain you why this works, or you could even more probably you could write also the minus as operator. That's because this star is the whatever. You will see it later several times. Whatever mostly is the most ambiguous expressions. It mostly expresses something like, yes?
Just letting you know.
What?
At an appropriate time you should break.
All right, let me finish that slide. This is the whatever, which means something like the whole shebang, which means in that context the whole array. So what this star actually is, that's you get this is just like a placeholder for the whole array. Also this is the square brackets are just the method call, and the method call gets the content of the square bracket passed as a parameter, and that's and what this actually is a closure, so block, and that block gets as a parameter, and that star is the whole array. And because we're here in numerical context, not only plus, also minor forces the numerical context, we know in numeric context we get the length, so the number of the last element plus 1 minus 1, we get the number of the last element, and the result is what you expect. So this is also when you divide it 2, you just get the element in the middle, because of the same. There is so much undiscovered power in that.
But excuse me,
yeah.
Which is the name of that method, the left square bracket? When you define it,
the real name of that.
When you say you can define a method like that, no?
Yes.
But when you define it, the name of the method is
yes.
The square bracket.
Yes,
but
yes.
There is also another bracket.
No. There are certain classes. There are classes for it. There are I don't mean classes in the object-oriented way, but classes in a hierarchy. There is a group of operator. Of course, they are in prefix, they are suffix, and this is a post-circumfix operator. So when you tell Perl, I want a post-circumfix, you write it in angle brackets,
so
post-circumfix, and give the syntax how you write it. Then he understands what you mean, and now then uses these brackets as post-circumfix and use it in that way.
So also operators are classes.
No, all operators are methods.
All operators are methods.
Yes. Yeah, and of course, if you do just the star, you get just the whole content. And because that's a default value, this gives you also just the content because it's the whatever, like we said. You see, it's totally consistent all the way down. Yeah, and of course you write it this way. If you have more nested structures, and alright, that game we'll do later. And they are equivalent. Yeah, this is a double colon, semicolon. Is just if you want several of these nested things, you can also write as these. Yeah. But okay, the game will come after the break if you are still there. Yeah. Thank you so far.